So I now would invite Llewellyn Foxcroft to take the floor. So we start with the presentation from the Kruger National Park. Llewellyn and we have been working at a book on plant invasions in protected areas, and Llewellyn is one of the key people working on this issue for the Kruger National Park. Thank you.
Thanks, Piero. By this stage of the Congress, you don't need to be told how important protected areas are, and by this part of the session, how important invasive alien species are to those. There's a lot of work being done across the globe in invasive species, and I'm going to take some examples from some of these different areas, and then some examples from South Africa, and then also, as Piero mentioned, from Kruger National Park to provide some ideas of what we would attempted to do. So as parks are facing increasing pressure along their boundaries, these different land use types bring with them different alien species, and they have different abundances and potential pressures, from urban to commercial agriculture to subsistence and commercial plantation forestry. And these have a number of different species. We also know that even an area as large as Kruger National Park, which is 2 million hectares, still is a small area fitting within the broader landscape. And there's a number of pathways and drivers outside of the park that can force invasions into the protected area. For example, human population density, we know, is a key driver of invasive species. And protected areas sit within enormous water catchment areas, which form pathways of invasions into those areas. And these can go through any kind of land use, that's including degraded and variously invaded areas. And then on top of it, large road networks that can potentially bring with them a number of species of different kinds. So there's a range of pressures on the parks from surrounding areas. So in this presentation, I'm just going to touch on a few areas that I think parks should be playing a role in, or should be considering both internally and externally. And obviously, Peter and I were on the same wavelength. Parks should play a bigger role in the broader landscape as sentinels and as model systems for driving a holistic approach to managing invasive species. So I'm just going to touch on some impacts that can occur across a number of biodiversity and other areas. Rhinos at the moment are under enormous global threat, and all further impacts are just adding more pressure to that. For example, Parthenium weed in South Africa has allegedly been impacting on black rhino population health, and in India, two or three species are overrunning the preferred habitat and grazing area of the one-horned rhino. Also in South Africa, one species that occurs in some of the subtropical areas in the east, it can have a number of impacts at a range of levels. For example, Nile crocodile invading the sites, cooling the nests, and potentially changing the sex ratios of the crocodiles. And we also at the beetle and spider community population diversity species richness level. But fortunately, after clearing, this trend was shown to be able to be reversed fairly quickly. Invasions also can have a huge impact on disturbance regimes and processes. For example, fires, where areas that have not burned previously can have highly intensive fires introduced into them. For example, in Florida, areas that would not previously burn or burn at the intensity or vertical structure of burn can have these fires move into the canopy, having an impact on tall trees. Similar in northern Australia, the invasion of the African grass and the pogon, changing the biomass of those woodland areas by up to 7 times, and the fire intensity up to 8 times. And it changes the open woodland system to grassland systems completely. And growing importance to parks is that of ecosystem services. And in a matrix of different land use types, there's often communities that depend on parks for different resources and can be changed quite substantially if they're invaded by completely different species or life forms. Other kinds of services, water, providing fresh water, sufficient quantity and quality, that can be completely compromised if invaded. As we mentioned, invasions don't occur across just the park boundary, but right across the landscape. And these can have severe human and health impacts. For example, Parthenium weed, which is occurring across eastern South Africa and going up eastern Africa. Subsistence communities which often have to do hand weeding can be heavily impacted by Parthenium, and also agriculture, livestock can be potentially impacted as well. So it's not only within the park that needs to be considered, but parks need to play a broader role if they're going to have a role, can provide assistance to both human and animal health. Impacts on economics can be quite severe. Most protected areas, systems or parks don't have sufficient funding to carry out all the management aspects that they should. But to work in extensive alien clearing programs, which can occur often in the Czech Republic more than $100,000 per year. In Germany, just on one species, more than $180 million. And in one national park, focusing on one alien species, more than $70 million. So these are large sums of money. Monitoring data is essential to get the minimum that's needed as distribution abundance to be able to determine trends over time, and also to determine whether control programs are being successful. And this can be done in a number of ways. For example, in Kruger, using the cyber tracker program, rangers collect data during their routine patrols, and this can be downloaded. And we have currently a database of about 30,000 alien plant points across the Kruger landscape. In a smaller national parks, structured surveys can also be used. This has proved to be extremely successful, getting precise data on per species, age of plants, and also the density of plants. And this can be followed up over time, over different, after clearing. Natural laboratories, protected areas provide an excellent opportunity, and for a number of reasons. They have a range of sizes and habitat types. They also have been proclaimed at different times, and this allows you to look, for example, at rates of invasion. They have different management practices that can be looked at, disturbance regimes, and often species that don't occur outside of the park anymore. But more importantly, the science doesn't just get published into scientific journals. It can be used directly to influence managers on the ground and provide concrete support. Policy, this obviously, as I mentioned, needs to be translated, the science, into policy. And at a higher level, there's a number of conventions and international support, and at a national level, and a number of countries have strategies for dealing with it. But it needs to go down into an agency level and even a protected area level to be able to guide managers on the ground to implement successful long-term programs. One perhaps unique example comes from Kruger Park. We have more than 1,500 staff living in the park, and in the gardens we found more than 250 alien plants, with a large number of them potentially invasive. So we've had to develop a program to manage this very complex problem. Most parks or people consider control as just the tools that are available, and there's a number of tools, and a lot is written about how to use them, and if they're planned, can be quite successfully implemented. But there's more to it. There's also the opportunities and the social benefits that can be gained from using control in clearing programs. And one example is the South African Working for Water model. Some of you may be familiar with it. This has taken three components: environmental needs, the hydrological, ecological, and the resource. And it's linked that with the social needs, especially some of the poorest communities, and economic in the government's program to get out poverty relief funds. And this has resulted in a program that's been running since the mid-90s and is currently at more than 650 million rand per year. It's these kinds of programs that protected areas need to engage with if they're to be able to implement large-scale programs. For example, in national parks in South Africa, more than 100 million rand per year now, and in Kruger Park alone, more than 10 million rand. And to implement this out of our own operational funding would be almost impossible. But at a national level, there's also the opportunity to create employment. And on average, about 25,000 jobs have been created through the programs since its initiation. Parks are obviously in a unique situation to create awareness, and this is obviously because of the large number of visitors that can come and take that message back to society in general. There's a much broader role that needs to be played, and this is to engage with at a wider landscape level. And this can include improve strategies across the landscape for a number of reasons that are important to not only within parks, but neighbouring areas. And as the importance of parks are being recognised more widely in society in general, this needs to be used and motivated for additional resources to start gaining more public support. For example, in Kruger, the upper catchment is several thousand square kilometres, and if we were not to engage with landowners upstream of the park, any efforts that we put in place to control species inside the park, which is a small fraction, will be severely compromised. So just in conclusion, protected areas need to take a stand and play a role as sentinels and act as model systems across a broader landscape. And there is a lot of work that is going on, and parks should start working together more closely on invasive species issues and develop collaborative networks. For example, there's numerous case studies available, and as Piero mentioned, we put together a synthesis of a number of case studies, and we can use these as examples to learn from each other and to develop that collaboration. And thank you very much to Piero and all my funders. And Spring has kindly made the synthesis of the book available on CPD and the Parks website.
Thank you very much, Llewellyn. I'm very glad that Llewellyn could give us an overview of the broad range of actions that protected areas such as Kruger can and do on invasive species, and also based on this analysis that we've done together, explain how compiling information can help us improving our efficacy in the future.